There's no clever twist here. Jesus' point is pretty straightforward. Forgive other people, or you will not be forgiven. And if we aren't forgiven, we go to hell. Jesus uses this number 77 in a symbolic way that means to forgive as many times as it takes. And forgiving people is hard, and it gets harder when they hurt you badly or repeatedly. But Jesus doesn't offer exceptions. Forgive, or you will not be forgiven. To understand why this is the way it is, we have to get our first principles right, the foundation of what we're talking about. What is sin? Seriously, when someone asks you what is sin, how would you respond? Doing something wrong, breaking the rules, hurting someone, an offense against God? All valid answers. The Catechism describes sin as an offense against reason, truth, and right conscience, or as an utterance, a deed, or a desire contrary to the eternal law. Reason, truth, the eternal law. Do these sound like arbitrary and random rules? No. These things refer to that fundamental nature of reality, the way things are and are meant to work. Sin doesn't just make God angry because we aren't listening and he likes to control us. Sin violates reality itself. It hurts us and the world around us, taking something good and beautiful and twisting it. And because we are fallen and easily deceived, it's not always obvious to us the way things should be, or just how serious our sins are. So Jesus' parable puts sin in terms that might be easier to understand. Debt. Over 70% of Americans are in debt, so we can relate to this. If someone hands you a $10 bill and you light it on fire, you don't just offend the money or the person. You destroy, you reject what it is. And this is true whether or not you know what a $10 bill means when you burn it. And here's the thing, even though that money was given to you, it wasn't entirely yours. Its value depends on its connection to the larger whole. A $10 bill can only be exchanged for a sandwich if society agrees it's worth that much. And when you destroy that money, if you were to withdraw your entire account in cash and set it on fire, you no longer have the money. And you've also made it so that no one else can have that money. Another example, if you borrow a car from a friend and then wreck that car, you can no longer drive it somewhere. And your friend also loses the ability to drive. You didn't just offend or upset her, you cost her something real. And you owe her a new car. This is what St. Paul is reminding us of in the second reading. None of us lives for oneself, and no one dies for oneself. Whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. The hair on your head, the lungs in your chest, the brain waves in your mind. These aren't arbitrary and random pieces of information. They are real and they work a certain way. If you put water in your lungs or acid on your hair or electricity in your brain, it's not just offensive, it's destructive. And more importantly, all of that isn't just yours. Like the car or the $10 bill, their value is connected to others. When you think, speak, or act in a way that is contrary to reality, to the way things are supposed to work, even if you don't understand why, even if it doesn't seem like a big deal, sin always, always, always hurts other people as well as yourself. Everything we have and are is given to us by God and is connected to others. And God gives us the freedom to use these good things, and there are many ways to use them correctly. When we use them wrongly, even in the tiniest way, It matters to us, to God, to others. And like the car, when you take these things, life, stuff, human nature, and damage it, you owe something to God who gave it to you, and to others who are affected by that choice. And this is why Jesus compares sin to debt. Every sin puts us in a kind of spiritual and often physical debt. And it's why Jesus is using a ridiculous number in this parable. Our translation gives us the rather underwhelming word, huge amount. Literally, it's 10,000 talents, which if you translate to today's currency is about $4 or $5 billion. What servant gets billions of dollars from his king? The point is that we owe God so much, everything, that we could never repay it if we misuse or destroy what he gives us. But like the king in the story, he forgives us this debt if we ask. But the servant then goes to someone who owes him a mere $10,000 and violently attacks him over that debt. This is so dumb, it would be hilarious if it weren't so sad. The king is rightly appalled. What is 10,000 compared to 4 billion? So the king has no qualms about handing this selfish hypocrite over to the torturers until he pays it back. And because of the absurd numbers involved and the reference to torture as a punishment, this probably means that he goes to hell, where suffering is the result of choosing to hold on to that broken version of ourselves, created by sin. It's possible Jesus means purgatory because he does mention paying it back. But think about that. At the rate of a typical worker, it would take 60 million days, well over 150,000 years of torture to pay back that debt. And if that's the case, by torture, we mean like setting a broken bone or intense physical therapy, that debt payment can feel like torture. Either way, whether it's hell or a very long time in purgatory, this certainly should make letting go of $10,000 compared to the $4 billion as an easy choice. $10,000 is a lot of money, and some sins from other people really hurt us. But there's nothing we can do to each other that ever comes close to what we already owe God. 10,000 to 4 billion. So yes, forgive everything, every time, for those who hurt you. It'll help to make two important distinctions in this process. First is that forgiving is not the same as forgetting. Forgive and forget is not church teaching. Maybe you forget, maybe you don't. That's irrelevant. What matters is that you let go of the spiritual debt someone owes you for their sins. Use this thought experiment. Imagine that you and the other person are standing before God, and God turns towards you and points out, this person did this to you. Do you want them to go to hell for it? If your answer is anything other than no, you have not yet forgiven them. Another distinction to remember. Forgiving is not the same thing as reconciling. To forgive is to let go of that spiritual debt, to let go of that desire to send them to hell. To reconcile is to restore trust and affection. And if someone is dangerous or untrustworthy, if they aren't sorry and don't want to change, you don't have to reconcile with them. You probably shouldn't. But you do still have to forgive them. And this is what makes confession so amazing a gift. Every time we go to confession, we aren't just forgiven that immense debt. We are also reconciled to God and the church. So make use of that sacrament. And if you are struggling to forgive someone, try going to confession more. Go receive the forgiveness of your great debt to God. Be reconciled to his love, and you begin to receive the grace to let go of the much smaller debt from others. To take that step of forgiving them, even if you can't reconcile with them. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So what are you waiting for?